hit the button. There, we're
We're
here.
here.
Oh, yeah, Jilly's not here.
Listen, we forced her out.
I know.
It was a bloodless coup.
Well, I'm already terrified. Me
too. No, she's away. She's busy. She's tied up. So
yeah, she's making
we're
the
running
world
the
a
show
better
today.
place.
We're in charge.
Yeah, she's doing that. Right. Anyway, let's just crack on. Welcome to the Good Prank Podcast. My name is Stuart Steele. I am Strategy Director at Good. Good is a prank consultancy based in the United Kingdom, working with clients all over the world, mainly in the B2B tech space. It's fascinating. It's really good fun. And I'm joined today by Chris Lumsden.
Hello there. Hi. I'm always very impressed. Your intros are much more concise and coherent when there's not the three of us and there's less messing around.
I know, mucking at it, just straight in it,
straight
here for a good time, not a long time. Yeah,
so who have we got today?
Well, we've got an interview with Catherine Connolly. We're having a chat with Catherine, and Catherine's a client who's been with us for a long time. She'll introduce herself a little bit later, but we just thought she would be interesting to have a chat with because she's at the, she's reached the top.
She's talking to us from the elevated position of executive chair.
Can you imagine?
It's high. It's a high spot.
She's climbed the top. She's climbed to the top, and there was a chair with the word.
Yeah, there was a chair. But it's going to be a fascinating chat.
Yeah, and she's come from the marketing space and now is kind of running a number of organisations. It's great, and we just felt that sometimes the sense is that brand isn't taken seriously by people at the top, and with Catherine, that's absolutely not the case. It's very much at the heart of what she brings to a business.
Yeah, and her perspective, because joking apart, she is a very smart lady, and she is in a very, interesting position where she can look back and look down and review what's changed and what works and what doesn't in the boardroom. Interesting stuff.
Yep. So enough about us. Let's get Catherine to introduce herself.
So I'm Catherine Connolly, and I am currently the executive chair of an organisation called Prime Light Group, which is a business that focuses on selling components and retrofittable lighting controls into the commercial sector mainly. Previous to that, I started my career really in B2B marketing through Honeywell, which under the MK Electric brand. I moved on to Schneider. I'm working with the residential temperature controls business called Drayton in Everleigh. And for the past 7 years, I've been the CEO of a lighting and wiring accessories company called ML Accessories, which goes to market under the Knightsbridge brand.
7, yeah. What a great background. What a great, tailor-made, perfect fit. We've never had an executive chair on the pod before. So welcome and congratulations in your new role.
Thank you. I don't actually have an executive chair, but apparently I am one.
It sounds fantastic. It's great, Catherine. Thank you for coming on. It's been, we've been wanting to chat to you for a while because you have got such a history and we've worked with you on various stages in that. And I think before we get into all the detail, the first scene-setting question I wanted to ask you was: you're just in the door at Prime Light. You're finding your feet, and you've got 1,000,001 things to think about. Where's brand in that, and what's your hot take on how what role it's going to play for you?
I think brand is really important, and is one of the first things to consider even before you step in the door. So even when you're interviewing for the job and thinking about what your career progression is and is this the right opportunity for you, I think brand plays a significant part in the decision-making process, really. And that may be in terms of understanding exactly what it is now, or in my case, I would say for my new company, what it could potentially be.
Right.
So I think it's pretty fundamental to making that decision. Might not be for other people, but certainly is for me. Certainly coming from a marketing background, I would consider that.
That's what I was going to say. Do you think that's because you've got that in your blood anyway, and you've brought that perspective?
Yeah, and I think to me, the brand is the soul of the organization. And, sometimes in B2C, it's already well established. In large corporates, it's already well established. In this role and my previous role, it was kind of established, but I don't think yet defined. And I think that definition goes through all your customers, and it also goes through everyone that works in the company as well.
Okay. Well, listen, I'm going to look forward to unpacking some of that with you, but and it's great. It's great. I mean, you are somebody with a marketing background and a brand, an interesting brand that's, at board level. And we always say that we need more people, represented in the boardroom that has that in their blood. So that's great. It's a great result. Can you take us back to the start of your career and where, you first became aware of how important brand is, or is there anything that as you moved through, because I know that you obviously started in marketing, but I know you've been in sales and general management roles as well. Can you talk a little bit about how the things change, or is there anything that jumps out at you that's worth mentioning?
Yeah, I think my degree's in business, and I specialised in marketing and business strategy. So you hear a lot about brand, but particularly all those years ago when I did my degree, a lot of it was focused on, your Procter and Gamble's and Unilever, and those were the case studies. And I've always worked B2B. I've worked really quite filthy trades, as it were. I mean, I've been using rivets and fasteners, tapes and stuff. But I think, what I learned moving into marketing, particularly at Honeywell and MK was the first name that I'd kind of heard of. And that's because they put the logo indent in the sockets and light switches. So there was some touch point, although it wasn't very strong. But when I got into the organization and working through my marketing career, you realize how important the customer is in helping you define the brand, because you can't really, they have a perception already, and to change that perception is very difficult, and it's got to be very consistent. So, if you want to find out what your brand is in a B2B business, you need to go and talk to your customers about it, especially in electrical, where apprentices are trained on certain products, and so they live with that for the rest of their career. And it's very difficult to change people off that, and they have this perception to shift, and that works both ways. If you're doing an appalling job, they'll still think you're great. If you're doing a great job but they think you're appalling, then you're still going to be appalling.
That's quite interesting, the fact that, if they're trained in a certain way or to use certain tools or products, it's a very deep groove that takes quite a lot to shift them out of.
Yeah.
Stuart, you talk about that when you talk to sales teams and stuff, don't you, about how important that knowledge and understanding is?
It's just comfort, just because if you know how to work it, these people in those dirty trades, which I like, I'm going to use that a lot, is that they're quite conservative, so they don't want to change. So if you can help them do a good job, they're delighted. And so if you can help them with anything training, because that's really how Honeywell built a big moat around their business, was through the training. So yeah, it's a really important part of their brand.
I also think there's, in B2B, you're not necessarily going for exactly the same customer all the time. You might be going for a number of different customers. So you might be talking to someone who installs the product. You might be talking to someone who stocks the product. You might be talking to someone who specifies the product, who designs the product in. And each of those elements has a view on your brand is, and that view might have the same strings going through it, but maybe slightly different depending on what their touch point is with you.
And so as you moved from, that kind of experience you gathered in marketing and more into general management and leadership roles, do you think, how did the knowledge or the understanding of brand change with your peers in those spaces, or did it?
I think, in marketing, you're sort of carrying that flag. And I think there is a certain amount of skepticism as to how important it is. And it's just, can sometimes be, well, it's just a marketing thing, but actually brand is an asset, it's on the balance sheet as an asset. And I think as you go through your career, then I started to think about ways that I could tangibly measure that brand. So I wasn't just talking about it and what our customers thought. I was giving people evidence. I was giving people data. And I think that's certainly something that I developed, and I certainly recognized as I went through my career that that it's important. And I guess, B2C, you're probably doing that all the time, but in B2B, you have really easy access to your customers. So, you can find that information out. But if you want to have some credibility at board level, then I would say get the data,
Well,
get the
that's
evidence.
and let's talk about that then, because it's something that we drone on about on this a lot, is about, brand being able to be taken seriously and being commercial and understanding it's about more than the veneer of design and linking it to growth and it being all of the phrases that we use and talk about. Well, I mean, you've lived it, you've seen it, and you've just hinted at it there. So obviously in some businesses it's more valuable or seen as more valuable than others. Can you talk a bit more about that and just on how that awareness develops and how you try and embed that within a boardroom and where the friction occurs, all of that stuff? Can you unpack that a bit for us?
Yeah, I guess, in terms of the evidence, I've run customer surveys, I've done focus groups, and I've got that data. And, I've tried to use it as part of the decision-making process, particularly on product development and what products we can get involved in, whether we can get involved in adjacencies. Does our brand's trust and loyalty move into that? So I think it can really drive a product roadmap in terms of, and a strategy in terms of where it's possible for you to go next if you have this anchor point, which is your brand. Particularly if you're going to be servicing the same customers, do they, if part of your brand value is trust, then, can you move into these different segments and the people will still trust the brand? Or, are you moving too fast? Are you going into something that's completely unrelated and therefore people just think, well, I don't understand. And you've got to go to a whole new audience and then you've got to tell them that this is what your brand is and what it means. So I think having that data and that evidence can drive a lot of decisions at board level. I think, in my experience, there's been a bit of hit and miss as to who values that and wants to hear it, because sometimes the financials take over that decision making and mistakes are made, and people are trying to push a brand into something where it just doesn't.
See, one of the interesting things, Catherine, is that you've worked on brand and tried to push it up, and you've managed up, and now you're in a position where you can look at brand and push and manage down. Is there any difference between it? One would imagine it's easier to manage that down, but is there any differences within that? Is there any different kind of challenges from coming into an organisation saying, listen, here's brand and I want to be an asset, as opposed to kind of pushing up, going, look, we should manage it. Is there any difference in there?
I think when I think there's a discussion point about as a new marketeer, what advice would you give? And I think it's that the grown-ups in the organisation, which I now am, don't actually know it all. They don't. You in your role may live and breathe that brand or that product or whatever it is you're responsible for. When you get higher up the organisation, people tend to have this view that you know and understand it all, and actually you don't. And I don't at all. I learn every day. But I see my responsibility, once I've established that brand, is actually I can leave marketing, the salespeople, to go and sell the brand, or marketing to define it and make sure we're consistent in our brand. But my responsibility is making sure that everyone in the organisation represents that brand and everybody's turned in the right way and that they are delivering what our customers expect from our brand. And I think that's really relevant in my last position, which ML Accessories, Knightsbridge, a shield of some sort on the packaging, another logo. And one of the first things I did was clear it all and do our nice big purple K. But that became consistent. And I think also that everyone we recruited, everybody that we trained, everybody that we worked with represented that brand, and I think that's another discussion point, that it does become part of your recruitment process, because you don't want to be taking on, for example, a salesperson and then just think, my God, do I really want them representing my brand in the organization? No, I don't.
And that example you just described, and you've talked brilliantly just about, a very practical, pragmatic approach and using data and it being the way to create or to influence the boardroom. But when you talked about, coming in and moving everything to one under one umbrella, one brand, where was the friction in that process? Was there friction? Were there people that didn't want to do it, and did you have to convince them? And what happened there?
I think a little bit of friction in that. From a marketing perspective, maybe that they didn't think it needed changing. We also had a parent company, didn't get too involved, selling it to them as to why we'd invested. And then, and then other people didn't really necessarily have a pushback, because they had a very strong view of what the company was anyway. I think this was really an exercise in articulating that and defining it, rather than throwing it all up in the air.
I think that's the thing, isn't it, Stuart? We find that we need to choose our words quite carefully when we talk to clients, because there's a fear that we want to come in and change everything. And it's nothing could be further from that. It's about cementing things and organizing it the right way so that it's easily repeatable and recognizable.
Yeah, and it's consistent, and your customers see the same thing all the time, and they see you behaving, and they see your people behaving exactly the same way all the time, regardless of the situation.
I'm loving you saying consistency, because it's one of the things that one of the 4 things that makes a strong brand is that consistency. How, when you've been in organizations, because there's always the challenge that it's old for you but new to a customer, and the kind of thing, and that natural human desire to go, we've seen a lot of this. How have you guarded against
this?
I'm bored, but when actually it's new to 99% of your potential audience, how have you guarded against that? How have you kept that brand sacred and not done the change?
I think for me personally, having a certain level of control freakery certainly helps in that I'm not prepared to let anybody touch it. So I think that helps. But I also think that when the organization sees consistency, I mean, we did have people coming in and going, oh, we should be doing this, should be doing that, should be doing the other. But the gatekeeper, I saw myself as the gatekeeper, and the marketing team is the gatekeeper, and the gates came down, and the answer is no.
Good for you.
And actually, I don't care what anybody else is doing. That's not what we do.
That's leadership. That's leadership. That's what's needed, because otherwise it just runs out of control.
And was that the pressure? Was the pressure about what other businesses were doing rather than what your customers needed? Was that the challenge?
Yeah.
Right.
And also, and again, it comes down to the data as well, doesn't it? Because, so-and-so's doing this and they're doing that and they're doing the other. Yes.
Such and such has got a TikTok. They've got a TikTok page. Where's our TikTok page?
Yeah. Exactly. They're putting out 6 posts a week on LinkedIn, but no one's looking at them. So why do
in the old days, I used to call that marketing by in-flight magazine, where we used to get quite a lot of people coming back, and they'd been on a business trip in in-flight magazine. What's our social media strategy? Why are we not on this? It's just because they've read it in the in-flight magazine.
And I'm guilty of that as well. I get a bit of time out, and I'm like, well, why haven't we got this and that? And actually, if I was a leader as well, you've got to value what your marketing team tell you. You've got to trust that you've got the right people.
I suppose it's allying that sense of experience and knowledge and the strategy and the keeping things with, being genuinely open to new thinking. New thinking, if it helps augment the work that you're doing in those particular areas. That's
And I have been in a boardroom where the sales and marketing director has been doodling his ideas.
All right, say more about this.
And that,
designing the logo.
We should do this. No, we're not doing that.
But well, interestingly, let's talk about that. Why do you say we're not doing that because that's not your skill set, or we'll get someone else to look at that, or we're just, it's a crazy idea. Why the no?
I mean, depending on who it is, it can be like, okay, well, could I take that piece of paper with me? Or it could be, and I've said, let's leave it to the experts to do. But, I know what you're trying to say. It's just that maybe we need to reflect it in a different.
It's that
Very diplomatic. You have the diplomacy skills in there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of thing. There's an interesting job there, the sales and marketing team. Is that now? It seems to me to be more separated. That there's a respect for the two.
Yeah.
Because I love sales people, but they're not necessarily the best at the marketing aspect. And the same with marketing, not great at the sales. Is that
No.
changing?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it needs to change. I think, you need someone for kind of 100% on it, because marketing's not, it's about segmentation, it's about positioning, it's about messaging. And, if you're a salesperson, it's difficult to have time to do all that. And it's a different mindset as well, and a different skill set, and each one being very valuable, but being quite different in the way they work. And we have had sales and marketing directors, and you usually, in my experience, coming up through an organization, you usually find someone who's actually better at one than the other. So they'll be more marketing focused, but they'll leave someone else to manage the sales team, because actually they don't really want to do that.
And is that also changed because marketing's more complicated? Because you could see sales and marketing, I would imagine, in the old days was kind of the same person going out and go, right, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to the racing? Here's a brochure. Do you want to go to the racing? We'll go and take you out. And that's do you want a couple of drinks? Let's go for lunch.
Both boxes ticked.
Yeah, and that's sales and marketing. But it's now, as you say, it's all these things now. It's kind of nice. You can see some growth there.
Yeah. And I think now it tends to be social media. I mean, the Gen Z version of the brochure is social media, isn't it? It's like you said, it's the TikTok page. Well, we'll just do one.
Instagram.
But, without thinking, actually, I need some very consistent content that I need to plan for the next 6 months and have it lined up to release, so that I understand who is coming onto my LinkedIn, who is coming onto my Instagram, who is coming onto this, and make sure the message, which will essentially be the same, but, might be phrased differently. Language might change slightly depending on who you're talking to. Keywords that you need to mention.
Can I ask, you've worked in that kind of B2B sort of lighting or tech stuff, industrial tech sector for a long time. Is there an awareness or a sense that, brand is an insurance against some of the copycat cheaper stuff that comes from other parts of the world? And is that understood? Is that because are there patterns you see in these businesses that keep coming back?
Yeah, I mean, one of the notes I wrote for this was, in a segment such as lighting, there are 740 lighting manufacturers, importers coming into the UK market. Very fragmented, very saturated market. And I think those that do well are the ones that recognise they need to add value with a brand. Otherwise, there's only one route that you're going to take, and that's price.
So define add value with brand. What do you mean? Do you mean, making the product easier to buy, removing from, because it's not just
develop trust about how good your product is, how maintainable it is, how easy to fit it is. You can put that against a warranty. You can talk about, accessibility. Where can I get this from? The language you use to talk to contractors about things that are important to them, which is putting the product in, not having to be called back, which is a quick fit, not having to fiddle around and stuff wires.
Yeah, so it's defining defining the value your product brings to them and save time or money, really, in that sense. And having smart comms around it.
Yeah, and the loyalty that comes with that, because they're just easy to deal with, I ring up, they've always got stock, they don't keep changing the prices. I know the product will go in and it'll stay there and I'm not going to get invited back. In fact, I'd fit it in
There's
my
that-
own house.
Yeah, there's that consistency word again. Yeah, it's that, isn't it?
But it's also that kind of thing where it's the essence of what good branding does, which it builds trust to make sure the customer doesn't make a bad decision. Because that's what you're trying, every point you're saying, this is the right decision. When you buy us, you've made the right decision. It's reinforcing that all along from consistency to messaging from everything.
Yeah. And I'm going sort of reverting back when we were talking about people and people in your company representing the brand, that, there's something in sort of in the electrical industry where, people buy from people, that's it. And I think that is important, but I think that feeds direct back to the brand. I think when a salesperson says that, actually they're reflecting the brand in it, because the reality is you can move on and they will like you, but if they like the brand more, they're still going to buy the brand.
Yeah. And if you can bring those two streams together, it's very powerful. What would you say? And you've worked in big global businesses, and you've worked in relatively small, privately held businesses. What are the, or mid-size, what are the differences in brand and between those types of organizations?
I think the brand is established at board level or not, as the case may be. So
you mean in the bigger ones?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, and I think this is quite open information. Schneider Electric, I mean, just the word Schneider Electric, I think they probably call themselves Schneider now, could have really defined what they did, which was circuit breakers. And then when they wanted to move into building management systems and energy management and how they can save customers money on their energy and how they can reduce carbon, they had to really they had to sort of almost refresh their brand without chucking away all the good stuff of a very established 100-year-old organization, but to then start to talk about it in terms of life is on and having to, being able to reduce customers' energy bills, being able to put in big BMS systems, being able to do...
Yeah, that's a big difference. Yeah.
Large commercial organization globally, very global organization. So they started establishing that. And then then you can become less influential in your role if that's already established at that senior global board level. I think working for a smaller, medium-sized organization, unless it's, if you're not the owner of the organization, you haven't brought it up and developed it, if you're coming in like I did with ML where the owners left, the responsibility pretty much falls on you to decide what that brand is, how important it is, what it's going to mean for you, what it's going to mean for the rest of the organization. So I think you're much more able to be in control of that than with a large company. I mean, and
so
it
you
is
can
a difficult...
you can get your arms around the whole thing and influence a lot more.
Yeah, and you can decide, what touch points in the organization and the customers your brand needs to reach. And you can develop that strategy. And I don't think, not everyone will do that, but I think my background when I went to work for Knightsbridge was such that I thought that was important. I thought that was going to be a differentiation point for our customers, and that one of the first jobs I should do is really define the mission, vision, value for the organization and what that meant for people that work for us, but also what that meant for everyone we were talking to. And essentially we were talking to electrical wholesalers at the time, but we developed teams that then moved into home improvement, to online, to specification, and were able to, knowing what the brand was and what it meant, made it easier to get into those new customer channels.
Brilliant. So because you defined it, it became easier. Because you had your anchor, you could see where you moved from
where
there.
you could go. And that, and that applies not just channels as well. I mean, Ireland, not so different, but we moved into there. But for the past year, we'd moved into the Middle East as well. And so you're then transferring it to slightly different cultures, slightly different customer groups, slightly different ways of choosing.
That's important, because if you don't have it nailed down centrally, or, then you run the risk of people creating their own definitions in different markets. And we've seen that, where, the brand is effectively means different things in different places, which is a problem.
Yeah. And also, kind of like, well, we don't like purple, so could you make it blue?
Yeah.
Okay, then that's absolutely fine. You just,
Yeah.
if you've got that, like you say, if you've got that anchor, then you can be quite clear on what can and cannot be changed.
What can the thermometer, Stuart? What's frozen and what's not? Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question I wanted to ask you was, in general, and this is something we talk a lot about, is what are the biggest missed opportunities would you think, in B2B branding? What are the things that, and you've referenced B2C, what are the things that happen perhaps there really well that doesn't happen in B2C? Because it's this constant battle that we have.
Yeah, I mean, I think, sort of looking over that side of the fence, your perception is, it's really valuable. It's the linchpin of the business. They spend loads of money on it. And, when you come to B2B, it's maybe not seen as so valuable. Actually, in some cases, it's put in the hands of the salesperson. They're the brand, and each one represents it slightly differently because they've got their own set of customers, and then they leave, and then you've got a big hole. So, I think it's, there is a perception that B2C have more cash and are more strict about it. But I think in the organisations I've worked in and in the business to business, I think it's a real missed opportunity if you don't develop that brand, because, customers want to talk to you. You can get hold of them really quite easily and have a chat about what they do. They will let you come and work with them so that you can see how the product's put in, or what their buying process is. So you have people who are representing your brand a bit as well, because they're installing it, who really want to talk to you about it.
I agree more. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I do a lot of calls on behalf of clients, and it's customers, and they can't wait. They just can't wait to tell you. And it's not all. Now, normally what happens is we get a list of the good customers.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of there, but they're always very fair.
Yeah.
And they don't sit there. It's not a moaning session. They can't believe it's just a really good thing. And the feedback we get from it is unbelievable. Clients we've got a couple of clients who are always very nervous about it because they think that it's an opportunity to have a moan, but actually it's usually to reinforce what's right.
Well, and isn't that interesting? Because from a marketing point of view, that's you get a positive halo from that. Your customers then think more of you for thinking about talking to them about how they can be better. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
So you're basically saying that if the biggest miss is brand itself, if it's a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah.
I like that. That'll be a headline.
Brand itself, I know that, passing the brand to other people unknowingly and letting them represent what it is.
That's really, because again, in our last podcast, we talked to Caroline Jones at AC UK Atomical Concepts, and she said what's really nice is when they go out, and if you've done the brand job really well, you hear your customer repeat back your brand to them. And she goes, there's no better feeling, because it's working. When they start coming back to you and you go, I've heard that before, because we've given that to you. And the fact that they're carrying that for you as well is just, that's when it gets really, she goes, that's when it gets really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And,
that's a good...
you want to hear everything from the customers, and you want to hear, the stuff they really like about you and the stuff that they don't value about you, or they think someone else does better, or there's an element of distrust, or they've had a bad experience. You need to get that out, but they will tell you.
But you've never been one to be, if I may, you've got quite a tough skin around that, because you've also got an acceptance on the fact that it can't be 100% perfect. It's not what happens on the balance sheet almost. It's kind of, that's a consequence of stuff, but it's really what happens in people's minds. That's where the brand lives, not just in there.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, it's perception, isn't it? I mean, even if you know that to be factually incorrect, the fact is that's their perception. therefore it's right. And I've had discussions quite recently. Well, no, that's not the case. Well, one, you don't have the
Doesn't
evidence
matter.
to challenge that, and two, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's what they think. So now we know that. What do we do to change that perception? What do we change with them?
Yes, and where do we want to get to? Yeah. So, thinking of just looking ahead, Catherine, then, how do you see the role of branding evolving in B2B in the next, what's going to change in the next 5 years? What's big? And this may be specifically within your sector. What do you think is going to happen?
I think the awareness of brand and the investment in it is becoming more apparent
In
B2B. And I think part of that is because there are so many different ways now to talk to your customer. Before, when I was born, it was a brochure and a man with a beard, no disrespect, into a contractors or wholesalers, and that's what it is. And I think now, and also with financial restraints as well, there are, the digital ages that you can get out and talk to your customers straight away. You do that straight away. You don't have to wait for the man to put the key in his Cortina. You can get there straight away. So I think that naturally, because all that is changing, people, and I would hope, would realize the value of the brand and the investment that needs to be made in it, and sort of recognize that that's maybe something that they should start to develop or think about or have as a board meeting agenda item. Because there are a lot of competitors. There are a lot of touch points into your competitors. It's not just face to face anymore. They will look everywhere, and then they have access to everything else. So if you want to differentiate and you want to add value, then you need to make that a board meeting agenda.
Interestingly, I think that's a lesson that, because for as long as I've worked with the phrase, the Asian imports, and it was always seen as, we've just written a thing about it, it was always seen as kind of a code for cheap and nasty. But now they're getting to be okay, and now they're now learning how to brand. They're seeing the value of it and going, if we can push this up, we can still be quite cost competitive, but there'll be a brand that you can trust. So that's they're learning.
Yeah, you look at the likes of BYD and automotive, and we talked, Stuart, about Hisense and the electrical stuff. These brands, these brands are coming, and they're good. The quality of the products, good.
Yeah. Well, does the UK, Europe have a big manufacturing footprint anymore? No, it doesn't.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, they've learned how they've taken from us how to manufacture really well. So that's it's all quite, it's a exciting stroke scary time. So brand is the kind of moat that you want to try and build.
Yeah, that's your key differentiator, and if it's not on your agenda, then I think there will be a problem in a few years' time. In my view.
Well said. But is there a role that shaped your views most on the power of brand within your career?
I think on different levels, every role that I've taken from MK has shaped my view on brand, because MK, very established brand, but equally with that comes, at the beginning was, not very stylish, not very up to date, very inflexible, take it or leave it. But does it work? Yes. Would you do it? Yes. But what we're talking about previously, lots of people coming around the outside and starting to eat away at it. And so that, my time there made me understand that we could change that slightly. We should work on what perception our customers had. We should keep the big red logo, because that's what people really understood, and that's what ran through them. But equally, you can make the changes to it to soften yourself and become more flexible, become more adaptable. But equally, the core of safety, reliability still ran through it. And so I think that's the first time that I've really been able to work with the brand and to see how you can evolve it. Turn again, quite similar brand, very nice, but it's not Honeywell, and it's a bit old fashioned, really, isn't it? And I think again, we had loads of installers who were very willing to talk to us about it. And I think moving to wireless actually allowed us to flex the brand a bit. It gave us a reason to, because you had new people coming into the market like Nest and Hive. So from a functional perspective, you had to develop a wireless thermostat. But actually, we took the brand with us as well, and hopefully changed a few perceptions along the way that, we weren't just kicking out TRVs that were really great, but we didn't really have much in our bag apart from that. And then working with Knightsbridge, I think that's the first time where I felt 100% ownership of the brand. And although we had lots of disparate feelings about the organisation, that's the first role where I've been able to actually pull it together, to actually own it and to work through how we communicate to our different customers without alienating our core, but doing it in a very consistent way. And I think, that big purple K just inspired to be able to do that, because there was nothing dangerous about it. It was a different, from a factual point of view, it was a different colour from everybody else. It was welcoming.
It was quite graphically
it was a bit of
impactful.
Fun.
Yeah.
It could be adapted. We could turn it blue for the NHS. We could pride it. And that all gave people a perception about who we were and what we did and how trustworthy we were to deal with. So I think that's full ownership. And in this new organisation as well, that we're starting from the beginning.
It's happening. That's great. Very thoughtful answer. I like that. From through different roles, different scales of organisation, and different. Your opportunity was either was broader and more holistic as you progressed.
It was also recognised as well. Brand was recognised at every.
Great. Stuart?
Nope, I'm done. Well, what do you think about that? That was good.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
I love Catherine's always great value.
Yes, she is. And I think, what I like about these conversations is we never really sit down and talk about brand. We know it's important by Catherine's actions. She's always been very positive on brand, but to actually sit and talk to her, spend, letting us indulge herself for 45 minutes around what she wants to, about brand. She's got a very interesting point of view just about, it's definitely a North Star for her for the business. So I thought that was quite, you kind of got it, but it was just nice to hear her talking about it.
And I like the way she doesn't overcomplicate things as well, but she's very clear about, this is my domain, this is my area of expertise, it's not yours. And she doesn't let people pull the wool over her eyes that way. And I think that it needs someone like that, someone that's strong and has the domain expertise and clearly communicates that to others.
Yeah, but also, as you said, she doesn't know everything. That's what's kind of good about her. She does work in a little bit of grey. She knows what she knows, but she also is up for knowing what she doesn't know. And so, she's great.
And I think she's got a great sort of self-deprecating, calm demeanour, which is, and funny, very funny, very dry. Yeah. So, great. It's a great chat.
Enjoyed and if you're seeing it on YouTube, she's got great wallpaper as well. So you can,
Perfect.
You can watch that there.
Great. Very good.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye-bye.